Yo, 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 here we are, back again for another week of the Come Up. And this week, y'all are in for a treat. You should have no concerns. Mackenzie Chen is here. Ow! Yes, hello. Hello, people of the world of the Come Up universe. It's me, Nick, and this is the Come Up. Hi. Thanks for being here. I love when you show up. It means the show counts. I'm so excited that y'all enjoyed the takeover with Body Liberation for All podcast last week. That was super cool. Dahlia, shout out to you. If you haven't followed Body Liberation for All yet on Spotify, iTunes, wherever you listen to your podcasts, do that now. It's important stuff. Yeah, that's all. That's the tweet. That's what I got for you today. I am very excited. Mackenzie Chen is here. I don't know if you know Mackenzie Chen, but she's like kind of a legend. Like she's like one of the best actors I've ever met in my entire life. She's a poet. She's a musician. She's a filmmaker. All the things. She does all the things. And on Friday, her new album with her group, Growing Concerns Poetry Collective, will be dropping. And that is amazing. I want to give you just a little taste of what some of that might sound like. So here we go.
This is how I want to be touched. You have to ask first. I have to say yes. As if I am well water that has been carried many miles for you. As if all us black folk flew away laughing instead of getting on the boats that day. As if is a word that roughly translates to everything about me is a newly discovered planet that under the right circumstances is capable of sustaining life.
Ooh, I had to stop because we were just about to watch the whole video. Y'all, please welcome to the Come Up, Mackenzie Chen. Wow. Hello.
Hi.
How are you?
I think I'm as well as anybody can be right now.
That's always the statement. I feel like I've said this a million times on the show, and people say it to me as well, that how are you is such a loaded question right now.
It's impossible to answer. It's just like I'm present, living in a constant state of anxiety, but trying to like find joy despite that. And counting my blessings, you know what I mean? Like just feeling very fortunate for all of the ways that I can continue to live my life and do the things that I do.
Absolutely. Amazing things that you do. So, okay, we're going to get into all kinds of conversations about the world and the mess of it all. But I want to start by talking about Big Dark Bright Futures. Let's talk about that title first of all. What does that title mean to y'all?
Yeah. I was the one to kind of pitch that as our title. And when I was like thinking about all of the work that we had made that was going to constitute this album, it was feeling very, okay, let me backtrack. I think in moments like these, especially when we're talking a lot about race and injustice, white people are always asking Black people for hope. They're like, why should we be hopeful? What can give us hope? And I'm like, I don't know that people deserve hope right now. Like, I feel like that shouldn't be on me. Like, y'all need to do some work. And so when I was looking at this album, it felt, I don't know, it felt of the moment, but it also felt like something distant. It felt like something on the horizon, but also very nebulous. And so, I don't like in my work taking shortcuts to hope, right? To the place where we want to be, to the place that we deserve. Like, I think that we should do the work. And so because we're in the midst of that work, it's hard to know what the outcome is going to be. I hope that it's bright, and I believe that if we actually put in the work, we can get to that place of light and brightness. But I think we have to go through some darkness first. We have to do the shadow work, and so I think this album, for us, like really encompasses that. This album is the work, right? It's not the result because we haven't gotten there yet. One of the titles of the tracks on the album is "Peace After Revolution," and I think people are always asking for peace and asking for hope and justice before actually going through the revolution, before actually doing the work or changing anything. And I think that's what the title points to.
Ooh, see, listen, she wasn't even trying to be a poet, but she just was. Did y'all hear that? She said, I just wrote down some key phrases. She said, there are no shortcuts to hope, or we're tired of shortcuts of hope. Yes, period. Blanket statement. Shadow work, like all these, the work, like, and the idea of that work being in the shadows, that work not being something that you are applauded for, that work not being something that needs to be celebrated, but it's just the work that's always there because that is how it exists.
Yes.
Mm.
100%. And I think like we're in a moment where we're like, as a society, there's some of us who are really game to undertake that work and some who are really resisting, and it's creating the tension and the conflict that we're experiencing. And I keep finding myself coming back to the phrase like we're navigating like some necessary rubble, right? Like it's uncomfortable and it's scary, but like given the history of the nation that we live in, of America, like we're gonna have to go through it in order to come out on any kind of shore, in order to like realize the world that we're all deserving of. Like we're gonna have to go through it first. There's no way around that.
Yeah. Why? This is one of my lofty questions that probably doesn't have an answer, but I would love to investigate it with you. What is the fear of that rubble? Are people afraid of I'm gonna go with this metaphor so deep. Are people afraid of like physically touching and moving those rocks? Are they afraid of what they'd find under it? Like, are the rocks themselves the things that they think will hurt them? Like what's the fear of that rubble?
I think people don't want to be uncomfortable, right? And I think as a species, right, like we fear change, and generally folks want to go with the devil they know as opposed to the devil that they don't know. And I think it really comes down to just like like recognizing a sense of shame in regards to the past that we're all like subject to, but not wanting to look it in the face. And this moment is asking us to look it in the face, and that makes folks really, really uncomfortable. I also just think, Growing Concerns talks about a lot of things. We do focus a lot on like identity, and for two of us in the group, like that's like our Blackness. That's a big part of our identities. And I think honestly, when it comes down to that part of the conversation specifically, I think there's this latent fear that a lot of white Americans have that if Black people were actually truly enfranchised and had agency, that we would do to them what they had done to us for centuries upon centuries. Mm-hmm. I think that fear is largely unfounded. I mean, I think if we really wanted to, we could have burnt this whole thing down a long time ago, but that hasn't happened. We haven't done it yet. But I do think that fear is there, right? I think there's this recognition of, like history has been really shitty for this group of people, and what's going to happen if these people actually are enfranchised and powerful in the way that all human beings deserve enfranchisement and power.
Let's talk about Growing Concerns a little bit. What was Growing Concerns Poetry Collective born out of?
I have to give credit to Michael DeVille, who is a hip hop artist here in Chicago, an actor, curator, and also my partner. Like full disclosure, like he and I have been together since 2017. But the collective came first. Michael was looking for a way to. He had been doing hip hop for a while, but he had all of this kind of like free form poetry that he wanted to find a way to give life to and expression to. And so he got together with Jeffrey Michael Austin, who's the musician for our group, just to kind of like create sound and some original beats for some of Michael's poetic work. And so they were performing for a very little while, but Michael was like, this doesn't feel complete. This just feels like two dudes being artsy. And I feel like this isn't quite. This ain't it. So Michael and I, we had known one another for some time. We had met doing a kids play back in I think 2012, like 2011, 2012.
Man, them kids
And
plays, the kids plays get you caught up.
them kids plays. They don't know what's happening backstage.
They don't. They
anyway.
have no idea.
Anyway. um, but we had, we just kind of like been loosely connected for a couple of years, and then we reconnected. I think after he and I had both like really started to evolve and expand beyond just our work as actors, and we had both, it turns out, been like really like focusing on writing and poetry specifically. And so one day, he invited me to a rehearsal with him and Jeff, and I was thinking, oh, he just wants some poetry to like underscore whatever show he's playing. And I was like cool, down. So we met, we rehearsed some things. I performed some of my pieces that I felt like were vibing with what Michael and Jeff were already doing, and it was really cool. And then at the end of the rehearsal, Michael was just like, "This is great. We're a collective." And I was like, "What? Wait, what?" I thought we were just going to do the one show. So we did the show, and immediately after that, it was So Far Sounds. And so those are like very small, intimate performances in unusual performance spaces. Like it might be like a workspace or somebody's apartment. It's just like really the focus is on the musicians and not on just like the scene, Right. So we did that show, and then they immediately invited us to do another show, like a video like recording of another show. And so at the time I was like, I don't know if anybody's gonna like this other than us. Like, who wants to listen to like some poems and some music? That's some artsy. Like, I dig it, but I really did not know if anybody else was gonna vibe with it. But the response that we got in that room was so much stronger than I could ever anticipate. And then we played the second show, and the same thing happened. And it really just kind of like continued from there, like with, and not to say that there wasn't effort, but like it was just very clear that like what we were doing was special. And I always say that we're not reinventing the wheel by any stretch of the imagination, but I think we are doing something that is fairly unique in this moment. And I think the alchemy that we have found as a trio, as three different artists who all have different practices coming together to make this thing, I think is, based on the feedback that I've gotten from the rooms we've been able to be in, is pretty special. And I think, we've just been able to like continue just by like being true to like what our aesthetic is and what we have to say.
Yeah. What do you think is that special sauce? Like, what's the thing that you think made people be attracted and want to keep hearing work from you all?
Well, two things. This might sound, this might sound slightly egotistical, but I think all three of us are like really good at what we do. Or at least that what we are doing is resonating with people. Each of those threads independently resonate and are strong. And I think together they become that much stronger. Like Jeff is such a perceptive, sensitive, responsive, thoughtful musician. It's really it takes my breath away every time I listen to one of his compositions. And he's able to be so in tune with what Michael and I are doing. And he has like literally no ego involved when it comes to like his work. He's an amazing listener, Michael is a remarkable lyricist. Like, I know I'm biased. Like, I know, he's my partner, he's my boyfriend, but like, I wouldn't, I wouldn't lie to you about it. Like,
right.
if the shit wasn't popping, I would be like, yeah, he's a great person.
He's a
great person.
I love his enthusiasm.
No, but like, he's an amazing lyricist. I tell him all the time, I'm like, wow, it's amazing that you never sacrifice content for flow or vice versa. Like, you're always saying something very potent and very specific, and also like keeping this rhythm that is just like incredibly hard to do. It really amazes me. And like, personally, I'm always striving to grow in my craft and to become stronger. But I think I do have like a handful of moments moments where I feel like I really do happen upon some truth that I'm able to communicate in a really incisive way. And so I think all those three things together are, for the people whose hearts are open to it, it will automatically, I think it'll automatically resonate. And I think the other element of that is that we're always just telling the truth. Like it's not just that, it's like we're also sincere and vulnerable. And in the world today, I think that's a really, that's a scarce commodity. Like, we're not socialized to be vulnerable. It's dangerous in the world to be open in the way that I think art asks one to be open. And sincerity is also hard to come by because there's just seems like there's so much at stake and we constantly have to protect ourselves. So I think when people come across that sincerity and that truthful, that honesty, it's disarming.
Yeah. You have a quote on your website, and it's the Nina Simone quote: "An artist's duty, as far as I'm concerned, is to reflect the times." What does that quote mean for you, especially right now?
Yes. It's fun. I have to credit my very good friend and colleague, Doug Peck, who's an amazing musician, all around just brilliant human being. That is one of the quotes that when I teach the summer program that I teach alongside Doug, that's one of the like guiding principles of work with our students, because we believe that it's not enough to just like sing songs because you're good at singing songs, or to write a poem because you're good at writing poems. You have to have something to say, and there needs to be a reason why you have to say it right now. Like whenever I'm like watching a play or a movie or just any kind of story, any kind of piece of art, I always ask myself, why this and why now, right? Because there's a lot of very talented people out there all vying for your attention, all vying for your clicks. But I don't know. I think art is valid and worthwhile in and of itself, right? Like it's one of the things that enriches our lives as human beings. But I think we move to the next level when our art is actually has a sharpened point, right? Like when we like sharpen the edge of the knife so that it actually can have an impact on people rather than just being like a piece of content, right? Like we're flooded with content. I truly don't need any more content in my life, but I do always long for something that like actually says something, like actually has a point of view, that is relevant to me in this moment that we're in.
Yeah.
I don't know. For me, there's just stakes for me that come with art. And that's not the case for everybody. And I think that's fine. But for me, like what I make like feels I'm not satisfied unless there's like something I'm trying to do and that there's stakes that I'm confronting with it.
Absolutely. Well, because I think I mean, it's time for us to realize the stakes that our art has, because we need it right now. I really think that it's the one thing that's made me very happy about this pandemic is that I think that we've been able to separate art from systems in such a beautiful way. And I think that is so important because we gotta stop with the top down structure of creation. It just doesn't make sense. And that's the opposite of creation, in my opinion.
Exactly. I mean, I feel so fortunate to be making work at this time because it's like one of the last places that actually feel like egalitarian to a certain extent and like democratic. Like if you have something to say or something to offer, you have so many platforms with which to do that. If you make your own crafts, you can sell them on Etsy. If you make your own beats, you can upload them to SoundCloud. Like now there's a lot of stuff out there. So whether or not it'll like really have the impact you're longing for, there's a whole lot of other factors. But there's a platform, right? Like you don't have to get into you don't have to like like, does MTV even exist anymore? Like, do they do music videos? I don't even know.
I don't think so.
But like, right? They haven't done music videos since like what, like 2005? I don't know.
Like literally decades. Like they're like, what are those? Like we don't play those anymore.
Yeah. And what's so fascinating is that now the big wigs, right, the HBOs and all the big labels and all of even like Steppenwolf, they are looking to the independent creators. They're taking their cues from independent creators. I'll never forget when I saw Anna Shapiro at the Fly Honey show here in Chicago. Like when I saw the artistic director of like a major regional theater, like in awe of what some scrappy artists have been able to sustain for, I think it was year 9 of the Fly Honey show. I was just like, oh yeah, this is where it's happening. This is the pulse. It's not starting at the top. It's happening on the ground here. And I feel very fortunate to be, among many artists who have our ear to the ground and are responding directly to the world as it's unfurling, and also like what feels personally at stake for us. Like we talk about the things that have impact and relevance in our lives, and therefore impact and relevance in the lives of other people like us. And that's, I think, something that it's easy to lose touch with the higher up the ladder you get.
For sure. And it's so exciting. Like I've been telling people, they're like, what's the content? Like, what if no one listens? And I'm like, that shouldn't matter. I think that if you have to say something, it's like you were saying earlier, if you have to say something, there is a purpose, there's a reason you need to say it. And so you need to say it. And if someone sees it and they're moved by it, and even if it's just one person, like that counts, that matters. Yes. And I think that even right now is such a pivotal moment, because people that have never had access to art, like we have the opportunity to access them in a different way. There are people having conversations right now that have never even talked to each other, and people that are realizing disparities and insufficiencies that have never understood what that meant. And so the conversation is different. The conversation is changing, and we just got to trust the process. Trust your process. I don't know what that was.
Yeah. And I think, like, honestly, like if you're telling a truth that's inside of you, it's going to reach the people that it needs to reach. Like when we were, in the process of, getting this project, getting Big Dark Bright Futures, ready, we had a couple of opportunities to work with some really great labels here in Chicago. But we learned very quickly that that would have meant, in both cases, delaying the release of our project to next year. And we love the labels and the people who are involved with them. Like, we have like deep admiration for them. But we knew that like the work that we're doing and what we have to say needs to be said now. Like it can't wait till next year. Like if we were a different kind of group, if we had different kind of content and messaging, that might work. But like we are in response to the world as it's happening, and so we knew that like we needed to like let go of that option so that we could like say what we needed to say now, so that it could have the impact that it should have on the people who need it the most, right? Like it wasn't worth it to us to like have shine attached, to a label, if the impact of our work was going to like not be as strong. Like this album is something that we're offering to our communities and to the larger world that we think is really needed right now. Like it's full of care, and it's very earnest and very tender. And while we want it to be perfect, we also want it to like be received in the way that we hope for it to be received, and to wait would have undermined that. So we moved. We were like, we know how to do this. We're independent artists. We know how to do this, and we know that no matter what, it will reach the people who need it the most.
You know what is the most revolutionary thing about this all? That you thought about the impact of something. That's crazy. What a concept to think about the impact that an action may have on the world or another. Like, that's insane. Like, wow. This is why I love this show. We always get like the most incredible nuggets of like, see people, that's how you do it. Okay, slight pivot. Um, I miss you. I miss watching you act in the office and on stages and in spaces, and you're a fave of many people in Chicago. So like, how does that work? Um, how does acting feed you differently, if at all, than what you make with Growing Concerns? And how are you gonna come back to it, like once we're able to come back, like with all the conversations that are happening and how the world is moving, what does it look like to come back to that type of work in the future?
Ooh, a great and kind of intense question.
I'm sorry.
No. I appreciate it for sure. So when the pandemic hit, I was just like, well, yeah, I don't know. I don't know what that part of my career is going to look like. Theater is not going to happen in the way that we're accustomed to it happening until at least the middle of next year. And even then, kind of who knows, right? And then there are so many other considerations to take into account when it comes to anything on screen. And so for all of the many homies I have for whom like that is their most central mode of artistic expression and income, like my heart is so heavy because like it's a really intense reorganization of how one conceives of oneself, and how they function in the world. I do feel very fortunate that like my work as an actor is only a fraction of how I find artistic expression and kind of occupy my time and make work. The pandemic, like I've spent most of this time since the pandemic, like working on Growing Concerns work, and also my work as a writer and as a budding filmmaker. So that's what I've been able to like. That's what I've like shifted my focus to, because there's just that has more immediacy for me right now. I have done a couple of like Zoom productions of plays, right? Like Zoom like readings, and as we start to innovate as theater starts to innovate in the digital space, I've been involved in some of those projects. And which reminds me like of how much I really do love acting. Like sometimes I fall out of love with acting. I won't lie. Like it's a really hard job. It's a really hard job. Like even when you have a job, like even when you're doing a play, it's really hard because you're giving so much of your like emotional, spiritual, physical self, and like the salary just really depends on who's producing the project. And sometimes I do fall out of love with it. Sometimes I feel like, oh, I'm not getting cast the way I would like to be cast, or so and so got that role and I didn't. Like, I'm not immune to those jealousies. That's just a part of it. But I do feel very fortunate that like that is not my entire artistic world. I am looking forward to when I'm able to engage with it in a more substantial, like, real world way. Like I really do miss that. There's nothing like taking a story and a character's perspective and just like breathing myself into it. Like I think I will always love that. But I am taking the cue that the universe, I think, is trying to give us, and just shifting my focus to these other more generative art forms. And it's actually, I feel grateful to have the opportunity to focus more on the stories that I am trying to tell and the messages I am trying to communicate, as opposed to having a lot of that bandwidth taken up by interpreting other people's stories.
Yeah. Ooh, but she interprets y'all. Girl is great. like on-camera auditions that'll make you think you're watching a film. Great, she's amazing.
Thank you. I will say one more thing about that. Like, when a good project, a good story, and a character comes along, oh, I'm so here for it. I think you were in the room when I got to audition for a show. What was it, Station 11? That Hiro Murai is directing and was shooting here in Chicago. And I was so enthralled by that script, character, and so just like I felt so aligned with it. And even just auditioning for that was like a gift and a treat, and might have been some of the best acting I've ever done. Even though I didn't get cast, like just when it's aligned
for them. You were great.
That's fine.
You know, it is fine. It is fine.
They'll learn.
It is fine.
But, you know, for me, as I get older, it's more and more about the project. Like, you know, when you're young and you're just out of school, you're like, I just want to act. I just want to be on stage. Just cast me in anything. I just want to work. And, you know, I did that. And that's a fine place to be. Sorry, that sounded like super sarcastic. But like, we've all been in that space. As I get older, I become more discerning because one of the things I've learned is that you cannot trust other people to tell your story properly. And I've become much more sensitive to how my story as a Black person in America and as a woman in America is being told. And so the number of scripts or stories that I don't particularly care to lend myself to has grown, right? Like either like it needs to be something that feels really aligned with what I am here to say, or you need to be paying me like you need to be paying my bills with this project, you know.
And those are
so
the two.
It's, you know,
those are the like that's it, people. It even needs to be said.
There's three.
There's a third. What's the third?
There's three. So this is how I evaluate what I want to take on. It's people, project, and pay. And two of the three have to feel good to me in order in order for me to know that this is something that I will ultimately feel good about taking on. Like either like I have to like love the project and the people involved with it, even if they're not able to pay me a whole lot, but like those two will like get me through. Or like maybe I don't like so-and-so, but this is a good script and they're paying my bills, so let's go. You know what I mean? Like just two of the three and I'm good.
I love that. See, that's advice. Take it with y'all. That was free advice. Okay. You know what? They're going to pay you for that.
I'll tell you my Venmo, shit.
You're right. Tell the Venmo, but also tell them where can we get Big Dark Bright Futures. Talk about it. How do we get it on Friday or before Friday?
So we'll be releasing on Friday. It will be open to the world and we'll be streaming on all platforms. So wherever you like to stream your music, be that Spotify, be that Apple Music, be that Tidal, you'll be able to stream it there. It'll also be available on Bandcamp. So if you are feeling generous and would like to purchase a digital copy of the album, we never turn away good, American currency. So if you're feeling generous and you're old school and like to pay for your music, you are more than welcome to do that. And also like we're independent artists, like we're not with a label, you know what I mean? So I think we're in this time where people are becoming more aware of the value of artists in the world, given how impacted we've been by the pandemic. People are becoming more aware of how important it is to support Black artists and artists of color. So, while we never made this project, this is not a moneymaker for us. You know what I mean? We weren't kind of like, here's how we're going to make millions. We were like, no, this is what we have to give to the world. And it's important to us to give it to the world. And honestly, we wouldn't have been able to do even close to what we've been able to do without the support of our communities and people who really believe in like supporting what we do, both just in terms of like shares on the internet and in terms of like their generosity financially. So I do think that's important to mention, but like you're going to get this music one way or another and you can stream it on your preferred platform.
Yes.
Wow. Preferred platform, however you like.
And all that being said, go pre-order on Bandcamp. I'm getting mine right after this. And then when it drops on Friday, sleep to it and put it on repeat so that Spotify and Apple Music and Tidal can pay them the money they deserve for the thing. That's a trick. Just like, put it on.
I do have, thank you. Yes, retweet. I do have recommendations on optimal listening. So like
Yes.
this isn't like Migos, you know, this isn't like Ariana Grande. This isn't like just music you put on at the barbecue. This is like we're saying some shit.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's best to received in like more chill moments. Like put it on when you're making a nice dinner, roll yourself a nice joint, sit back, you know, like I think this is music for a moment where you can actually just like vibe, be with yourself or someone you really care about and just like have an experience. Like this isn't an ambient thing. This is like this is church, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But like not boring church, not like
the good fun church. It's when they got the dance team come out. Like we love those services.
Yes.
Mackenzie, wow, what a gift to have you here to speak about your work and your passion and your craft, and just I just think that you are such an incredibly gifted artist, and you sharing yourself with the world is just so important to the world and our healing. And thank you for coming on and being here.
Thank you. Oh my gosh, it was such a pleasure. And like just like having conversations like these, right, with another artist in the world who's like, yo, I have something to say and I want to share it with other people and I want to invite other people into that. And I'm going to use like the platforms that I have available to do that. Like, that's what I'm always here for. Like, I'm always here for because I know how hard it is, to like believe in your own vision, but also to like do all the like tedious work to make it happen. So like anytime I can be a part of that, like I come running as much as I can. So like congratulations to you. This is so dope.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Oh, my pleasure. I'd be crazy not to have you. Are you kidding me? Thank you so much for being here. I'm gonna wrap this thing up, but if you want to kick it backstage, I'll come chat with you after I'm done.
Cool.
Oh,
awesome.
We get to chat, everybody. Ow! Oh, we love her. Yes, we do. If you don't now, you will now that you've heard from her because she's fantastic. Quick shout out to my sponsors. Hey, sponsors. Thank you. Love you. Thank you for supporting me, and your gifts do not go unnoticed. I appreciate everything that you do. Okay, friends. That's another episode of The Come Up. I'm super excited that you got to hear this conversation. I learned a lot. I hope that you learned a lot because there was a lot to learn. Next up is Black Uncommon. I don't know if you saw, but I did a little game show with them on their Instagram Live a few weeks ago. And we're going to do a little version of that here too. Why not? I'm bored, and we like making trivia questions that stump people. Listen, building that resume. I'm going to be a game show host before the end of 2021. Mark my words. Thanks for being here, folks, and I'll see you next week.